If you run D&D long enough, eventually you will have a session that's a long slog. No one's having fun. Everyone, including you, is frustrated, and I'm here to tell you, you will never be so good a DM that this never happens to you. It happens to me. I think we just saw it happen on Critical Role. There is a lesson here, but unfortunately it's not, here's how to make sure that never happens. Instead, the lesson is, sometimes the session becomes a slog. It's no one's fault. Don't try to solve it. Just move on. Try to make next week better. As you get more experienced, it will happen less, but it never goes completely to zero. The asymptote never intersects the curve. There have been 3 times in my video game career where I was working and genuinely having fun, beavering away at some task and simultaneously just having a blast. Recording dialogue is one of those times. Another was writing all the battle chatter for Evolve in a couple of weeks. That was 12,000 lines of dialogue, by the way. The other was doing mission design in Mercenaries 1. Mission design, for me, was just a blast, sitting there all day and thinking, let me put a dude with a rocket launcher here, then playing the game and trying to bust into this compound with a helicopter, and thinking, nope, the dude with the rocket launcher can't get line of sight on my chopper. Let me put a watchtower here in the middle of the compound and I'll stick the dude with the rocket launcher in there, and then playing it again. Then doing it all over again, but in a jeep instead of a helicopter, then in a tank, then on foot. I designed a mission where you had to investigate these 3 locations looking for a high-value target. Each location had a small army defending it. The dude you were looking for was always in the last place you looked. A little cheat I'm not sure I'd do today, and so you had to survive all 3 pitched battles. Working with the AI guys, I wrote a pretty complex script that acted as a morale system, something otherwise lacking in Mercenaries. When one little army had taken enough losses, the survivors would break and run to the next place, reinforcing it, making it harder. Of course, you want to stop that, so you follow them, fighting them. So the whole thing, all 3 compounds, became one massive running battle. It took weeks of playing the mission over and over, every day, tweaking the script, tweaking which soldiers and vehicles were placed where, to get it exactly right. And I loved it. I was often at work 10 to 12 hours a day because it was so much fun. I still miss it. My friend Wallace is one of the best designers I've ever worked with, much better designer than I am. He played it once, and he beat it. He beat it in one go, but it was a crazy, intense, nerve-wracking battle that took a long time. It never let up, and it had to steal and then abandon like 8 different vehicles to do it, constantly riding this catastrophe wave that looked like it could crash at any moment. When he finally put the controller down, he was like, holy crap, dude, like it was the hardest mission he'd played. But it only took one try. I hadn't made it hard, I just made it super dramatic. I could do that because I had literally weeks to test it, working on it every day. You can see where the lesson's coming, right? You have a couple of hours to get your mission for this week ready. There's no real way to test it. Your players can't save and load and try again. They'll be playing through the first draft of your encounter design, and you'll be learning how hard or easy it is, what changes you should have made, live with them. So you design your encounter sort of agnostic of the players. You wouldn't do this if you had an engine like Unity and could load up Pillars of Eternity, drop in your PCs, and run the combat 1,000 times. If you had that option, you could ensure each battle was appropriately difficult. Some battles would rely specifically on the players using their cool abilities that would make them feel smart and special. But you don't have that option. Instead, you design the encounter on the encounter's terms. You think, okay, what is this Kraken? Where does it live? Why? What does it want? How does it usually deal with intruders? What's it going to do when it assumes the heroes are just more meatbags? What's it going to do once it discovers they're not? Why do the players need to fight it? When you have good answers to all those questions, you feel like you've done your job. You created a plausible Kraken encounter. Is it fair? Well, no. Why should an encounter be fair? The bad guys want to win. But it's also not unfair, because fair and unfair are properties of things you win, like zero-sum games, chess. But D&D isn't a zero-sum game. It's the Kobayashi Maru.
You're bothered by your performance on the Kobayashi Maru.
I failed to resolve the situation.
There's no correct resolution. It's a test of character.
It's an experience. Not all things are problems with solutions. Some things are experiences to be endured. You hope your players take the time to get good intel, do some research, scout the monster out. That often makes a big difference. But not always. And they don't always gather that intel. Doesn't mean they're bad players, it just means they didn't think of it, or they felt like they didn't need to, or they felt like time was against them. So it will come to pass that you bust out your Kraken and it's a slog. It's not fun, it's frustrating. You can tell your players are frustrated. You are frustrated. You feel something tickling you and you reach for it and discover it's your brains. They're dribbling out your ears. But you think, what can be done? The Kraken is the Kraken.
Is this Vulcan chivalry? The air's too hot and thin for Kirk. He's not used to it.
The air is the air. What can be done?
I say that to my players all the time. What can be done? The Darrow are the Darrow. It's how I feel while I'm running. Guys, I'm sorry, but this is the Kraken. This is what it does. And while I know that can be intensely frustrating, I can't guarantee that every encounter will be fun. I can only guarantee they'll be plausible. I can't change the encounter now in the middle of the fight because you would all be able to tell I was nerfing the Kraken to make your lives easier, and that would annihilate everyone's suspension of disbelief. And suspension of disbelief is all we've got. If we throw that out the window, we might as well toss out this game and go play Red Dragon Inn. I can and do fudge die rolls and adjust hit points to keep things dramatic, but those tools are limited. If I change things enough, you can tell this isn't the real Kraken. This is what Matt had to do in the middle of the fight to stop us from pulling our hair out. Listen, sometimes life is about pulling your hair out. You didn't design it to be that way, but the fact that it's turning out that way isn't always something you can fix. Acting like everything is a problem to solve is a very Western way of thinking. It's baked into us. But D&D is way more like life than it is like chess. It's not something you win or beat. Sometimes it's just something you endure. Afterwards, if you're lucky, the players get out by the skin of their teeth. They won, and it was certainly memorable. But was it fun? Not while it was happening. I'm here to give you permission to let go of that frustration. You did everything you should have done when you made the encounter plausible. You hoped it would be fun, but you can't ensure it will be fun because you can't test it. You can't spend weeks going over it over and over again until you know it works. So you feel like you failed. You let your players down. It feels awful to see that look on their face. But in that moment, there's nothing you can do. The solution is just write it out. Make next week better. Are there lessons to be learned? Always. Sure, every session is a new learning experience. That's why I think we'll never run out of content for this channel. But that assumption, this was a problem, how do we solve it, causes you to eventually just consume yourself. You start picking apart every decision, criticizing your players, yourself. Why? Because it was a slog tonight? That happens. It can't be your players' fault because they're the same players who had fun last week. It can't be your fault because you're the same DM. Nothing meaningful has changed. The same stuff that worked last week didn't work this week. You will be tempted to blame your players. God, they're so disorganized. If only they planned better. If only they remembered this spell or that special ability. Well, your players are thinking the same thing about you. They wish the battle wasn't so ridiculous, that you had been clearer in your descriptions, that you had explained this better, or at all. Blaming each other isn't going to fix anything. Going over it over and over again afterwards isn't going to fix anything. So don't do that. Don't replay the battle over and over again. It's diminishing returns. Think about it in the car, on the way home, and then when you get out of the car, leave it in the car. Put it down. It's in the past. These things happen. Write it out. Make next week better. People will see this and say, but you're the DM. Of course there's something you can do. That, to me, is the language of someone who hasn't actually done it. Or maybe hasn't done it enough. Eventually, you realize, man, sometimes things just go south. Write it out. Make next week better. And the good news is, compared to this week, next week will be way more fun. Trust me. That's the episode on Slog, folks. Hopefully it is a long time before that ever happens to you, but when it does, maybe you'll remember this video and relax a little bit. Next week, we're going to talk about the flip side of this, a video for the players talking about losing. Until then, peace out.